And you're now on, Michael. Welcome. And so, welcome everybody. This is the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. And today is Tuesday, April the 2nd, 2024. And we don't have a call-in number. Oh, somebody said that was loud. Yeah, he was in the same room with me and it was getting a big feedback. So, apologies for that. But I think we're all on and I'm glad that people have joined us here. Blog Talk is still down. So, anyway, welcome and welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart. Can you hear me all right?
You're very loud, yes.
Okay. So,
I know.
All right, let's rock and roll.
And I'll let you know there's several people. It shows we have 8 listeners, so we're glad that you're with us. And I'll let you know if somebody presses that they want to ask a question. And all you have to do to do that is there is a little telephone at the bottom of your screen. If you push that, it puts you over in another column that you want to talk.
So I take it my screen is different because I don't have a little telephone in the bottom of my screen.
That's because you're already talking.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Well, we'll rock and roll. If anybody has any questions, we don't have to announce our call-in number if you're on a station where we can't see you, because we can see everybody. And we got the message out to a few people that were here on Podbeam today because Blog Talk is down. I hope this isn't the beginning of another cycle of non-functional days with Blog Talk. We'll see what happens and whether or not we're moving in the direction of this becoming our default show platform. We'll see how that happens. So we're in the dictionary on Enlightenment, page 90. We just finished the bottom of page 90 talking about the word Rakhma, which is an Aramaic insult. This is Matthew 5:22, implying an object is a contemptible person, unworthy of respect. And I think we finished yesterday's show off with the idea of recognizing that respect is not a necessary aspect of what was called Rakhma. There's a really important distinction to make, and that is that in order for me to maintain my human life, it does not require any assessment whatsoever of what's happening in the world or who's happening in the world or what people are doing or how terrible it is. You know, people say, well, he doesn't deserve my respect. Okay, he doesn't deserve your respect. But if you want to maintain your human life, the law, and again, this is the word law in Aramaic doesn't mean the rule of a superior. There's some superior up there that's making these rules and you better follow them or you're in trouble. No implication of that whatsoever in the word law in Aramaic. It's simply the way things work. There it is. Here's how it works. If you have Rakhma, filtering the frontal lobes of the brain, which there is no concept, no word for in English, in Latin, or in Greek, any of the derivative languages, or languages between us and the Aramaic, there is no such idea. So who could maintain Rakhma? Boy, talk about a great way to destroy a culture. Take away the understanding of the requirement to experiencing yourself and living truly as a human being. And what do you have? The chaos that's going on in the world today. This one wants to kill that one, that wants to kill this one, on and on and on and on and on and on and on, and the vile words and the vile thoughts that move. None of that's human. It's not human life. And my offering is we're here to function as humans. And what is human life? Hold a newborn child, you know exactly what human life is. So be in front of the most contemptible person you can think of. And the requirement of how it works to be a human being is you maintain Rakhma, which means you function as active present love. It's got nothing to do with your behavior toward that what you might call a contemptible person. If someone is in a state of upset because they're in front of this contemptible person, guess who's got the problem? Well, the so-called contemptible person may not be the least bit contemptible, but contempt is up in the mind of the person perceiving. And their work, seeing as how contempt and the disturbance of contempt is moving them, their work is to quell the contempt in themselves. Remember Romans, Paul put a nice little piece in here. A lot of things Paul didn't understand, I think. But he put a nice little piece in here. Beware you who judge another, for that in which you judge another, you've been guilty of practicing. Now, it doesn't say beware you who hold another accountable for their behavior, for you've been guilty of practicing. It says when we enter into judgment. And judgment means we join with the disturbance in the mind and we lose the capacity to experience life through our human selves, through Rakhma, through love. So maintaining your human life, and here's this contemptible person who, quote unquote, has broken the rules of the society, and as a society member, your obligation is to report them. So if that's what it is, then that's what you do. Got nothing whatsoever to do with loving them or behavior toward them other than the behavior comes from a mind connected to love. You know, Yeshua went into the temple at one point, a place that was supposed to be sacred, and it was a place of money changers. It had become a commercial interest. And he said, get out. This isn't a place for you. He held them accountable. And his connectedness to love and the power of the presence of love scared everybody. Brought all the fear up in them from all the times they had never done what was in alignment with law. And so this state, and the next word in the dictionary, if we turn the page to 92, is ruka. Page 91 is Rakhma. So we're right into Rakhma. The love upon which all hangs. And actually, we'll need to be changing that word because it's actually the filter or the gateway. It produces the presence of love, the presence of human life in human form. So filter, gateway. Upon which all law hangs. And I'm going to put a hold there for just a second. And I just got a note. Give me a second here. I've got a note from a couple of... I just sent somebody a note to connect on. Excuse me. Somebody didn't want to be on the show and couldn't get into Blog Talk, unfortunately.
If you tell them to text me, I can send them instructions.
Okay. Sounds good. That microphone's really sensitive, and just the vibration of your disc comes through on it. So Rakhma, when they asked Yeshua the question, and we've talked about this many times, but every time we plug it in somewhere else, it empowers the mind to formulate a more accurate reality that is a construct that is in better alignment with the actuality, with the truth of what's going on in the world. So this filter over the frontal lobes of the brain represents the gateway for all-embracing love to enter. That one functions as human without request or demand for reward or return. It is that energy of being that includes or covers all of the spiritual faculties. So if we live in a world where we are informed by carbon-based memory, remember what was spoken about as the mind of man, was also referred to as Satan, which defined in Aramaic is the resistor, one who misleads. You remember that case where Yeshua's interacting with Peter, and Yeshua directly, this is right after the Garden of Gethsemane, Yeshua directly addresses Peter as Satan. It's interesting. I had a conversation with somebody recently, and they were saying, well, he was talking not to Peter, he was talking to Satan that inhabited Peter. No, that's not what it said. He was talking directly to Peter, and he called him Satan, and then he defined what he meant by Satan. For you think in the mind of man, Adamos, the red clay, carbon-based memory, which can only reflect the past. If everything you experienced is informed only by your past, then here's what I guarantee. Go read my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that's where you're living. You are Richard in the book. Because informed by the past, all perceptual constructs of the mind are simply reflections of the past. And if we allow those constructs to supplant or to replace the actuality of the creation, we're putting a thumb up to God and saying, forget it, I'm not interested. And this isn't about theology or a religious God. We live, move, and have our being in a certain energy field called love. And when we check out of that and use everything informed out of carbon-based memory or informed out of the past, informed out of the unresolved issues of the generations, then we are literally stuck in the desert. What had to happen? It wasn't about a hot, sandy place when the Jews got lost in the desert. It's about a 35 square mile area. If you knew anything about astronomy, which they did, you know the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and you know which way you want to go. In a few days, you've traversed 35 square miles. It's not about a hot, sandy place. It is about functioning out of the unconscious. Carbon-based memory. And that's what he said to Peter. You're doing that, Peter. You're being informed. You're not in what I have planned. You're not in the actuality of what love is presenting here or what the plan is. And he says, get behind me. Get out of my way. You're inhibiting what I'm here to do. Rakhma means that you are informed by the same mind that informed the man named Yeshua. It was called the mind of Christ in you. That gives a whole new meaning, a whole new world. All that conversation about a new heaven, a new earth, a whole new thing. Because now I'm living, if we go to the Harvard research we've talked about many times, they tell us that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, when there are 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity happening in the brain, the max amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. So just thinking about carbon-based memory and the mind of man, a maximum of 9, and actually the laboratory stats were 7 plus or minus 2. So it could be as little as 5 bits of data from carbon-based memory, as many as 9, that form this whole world that we see, that we think is out there, but is actually painted on the inside of our eyeballs. If you're in that, you're in Satan. That's exactly what Yeshua was telling Peter. Peter, you're being informed by your past. You think you have to protect me. You think you have to save me. You have no clue what I'm doing because you've never stepped into the actuality that I've invited you to. Notice just a few hours ago at the gateway of the Garden of Gethsemane, I said, come, hold the space of active love for me. And within an hour, you were blotto unconscious. I came out and said, can you not stay awake for even an hour? And they couldn't. Can you not stay in the actuality, connected to the active space of love? You've been with me for 3 years, man. Can't you do that for a lousy hour? And he couldn't. And a short time later, he's trying to inhibit the whole plan. So Satan isn't about this dude with a red suit, the tail, and the pitchfork. We had this conversation a while back. Somebody said Satan's best trick is that he convinced people he doesn't exist. No, Satan's best trick is he convinced us that he is a he and does exist. There's no dude with the red suit, the tail, and the pitchfork. That's another product of the one world universal religion to blame. Oh, the devil made me do it. It was Satan's fault. It's not me. I am an innocent person. So you see the turnaround that happened by the Greeks. Rather than understanding that if we're in the past in our own minds, we're dead. If the being that we think we are is just a product of the firing of brain cells out of the past, we're dead as humans. Yeshua says, I come to bring you life. I'm going to show you how to do that. Learn to collapse that raging mind, that frustrated, angry, blaming mind. Learn to collapse its content until that damn thing shuts up. And then there's room for you to show up. Active present love, created essence, hold a newborn child, to tap into what that really means. It's much bigger than I could ever put in words. And this word Rakhma tells us there's a gateway. And when that's active, then it's going to touch our reason. It's going to inform our reason, judgment, and behavior. So then there's several examples. Again, we're on page 91 in the manuscript. If you don't have the manuscript and you'd like a copy, you can order it from our catalog on our website, but it automatically includes shipping if you do that. And as part of the show, so that it's more available to people, we'll pay the shipping. The cost of the book is $25. We use the gateway of PayPal, and they collect about $1.50 of that. So if you go to our website, whyagain.org, and at the bottom of the page is a donate button. If you click that and donate $26, that'll cover what, or almost cover what PayPal will collect. We'll pay the shipping and get a copy of the text off to you. And this is what we've published so far from the ancient Aramaic Kobor's manuscript. So there are several variations on this word that are listed. Again, we're on page 91 in Matthew, through several places, all the way through Matthew. So it speaks of the word, different variations on the word Rakhma, different suffixes, prefixes, and whose love is all-embracing love, to have all-embracing love, dearly love, will dearly love, let your love act. Love reached out, extending that energy, functions as love, enacted love. You shall have all-embracing love. And so the idea here is that when that gateway is open, our awareness functions out of that original created life that we experience when we're holding the newborn. Our minds and our perceptual structures are informed by that presence of love. And so when informed by that presence of love, everything changes. And we move on down to Rayani as the source of thoughts, is recognizing, are your thoughts coming from carbon-based memory? And technically, my offering would be that what comes from carbon-based memory is not thought. It's the residue of thought, it's the reflection of thought, but it's not the real thing. It's like, we've talked before about the non-being mind has a cheap copy of everything that's real in the spiritual dimension. The non-being's mind's cheap copy of thought, which is, well, let's do it in reverse. The mind's cheap copy is, I cycle information from the past. Oh, I have a thought disorder about people who do this. Here's somebody doing this. They must be that. So we cycle that and we call that thinking. And if we're functioning out of carbon-based memory, the truth is anyone who's doing that, the truth is, if they said what they thought, they'd have to be speechless because there is no thought in that. It's a cheap copy of thought. But when we are informed from being, from the mind of being, and the gateway Rakhma is open so that that comes in, whatever's resonated in carbon-based memory, sanity will take over. There's an interim period, though, And the interim period could be decades. The interim period is when there is so much energy, so much resonant energy from the generational patterns of rage and guilt and fear and self-protection and self-deprecation and hatred and vengeance. Experiences are resonated or drawn to us by whatever we hold in carbon-based memory, and will resonate those things in us, which, if we are thinkers, and my definition, the best definition I've been able to come up with yet for thinking, and it doesn't look anything like the cheap copy, cycling information. Thinking is the ability to keep love conscious, active, and present in your mind, whatever's moving in your mind and whatever's moving in the world. And if you become a thinker, they will call you a genius, because everything is not true in your mind that presents itself in the presence of love is burned off. It's transmuted. So there's only truth left. But there is an interim period where stuff's going to come up, where the old rages and fears and guilts and terrors and traumas and hatreds and vengeances are going to surface. And each time you apply forgiveness to those, depending on your level of vitality, you will peel off another layer of that. You'll get to revisit those issues many, 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 many times. Why? Because unless you're at 100% vitality, you can't see 100% and clean up 100% of what's in your own unconscious. So if you're only at 50% vitality, well, you can clean half the database up, but the other half of the database is going to remain hidden. It's going to remain out of sight and unavailable to you. Then if you build your vitality to, instead of 50%, you go to 60%, then the trauma-based energies, the hostility and fear-based energies stored in the mind from the past and the generations, you'll be able to process up to a level 6. You get to a level 7 vitality, you'll be able to process up to a 7, but you won't get it all cleaned out till you get to a 10. So it's going to take time. How willing are you? How do you follow the laws, i.e. the way it works to have vitality? Do you suck down 4 Cokes a day and 3 Scotches? If you do, your vitality is not going to be very, very high on the list. Do you rage? Your vitality is going to be destroyed by that. Do you eat, at the latest fast food junk store? If that's where your nutrition comes from, don't kid yourself that you're going to be able to work through what it is that you need to work through in order to truly function as a real, honest-to-God human being, because it's not going to happen. It's a process, especially in my offering, is that we live in probably the most drug society in all of history. Think about it. The most drug society. Let's just look at it. If we, for instance, I'm going to just look at a couple of things that I've got here and read off the list. What's in your food? Well, let's take a look. Things that are inside of your meat hot dog. Well, it starts with casings from sheep's intestines, blood, animal skin, animal feet, head meat, fatty tissue, snouts, lips, mechanically separated meat, they call that white slime, edible slaughter byproducts, bone shavings, liver, brains, and eyes. That's what's in the hot dog. Now, if you think tortured animals that provided all of those things so that somebody could manipulate this thing, put chemicals in it so it tasted something like food, if you think that can provide you with vitality and aliveness, I'm going to invite you to think again, because it's just not going to happen. So do you run into your latest fast food place? Here, let me read another one. There's a particular product. I don't know whether I should mention it or not. No, I'm not going to mention the name of the product, except that it's an oat. It's made of oats. And this particular one that I've got, there's what the United Kingdom, England, will allow, and what's in the listing, and what is allowed by law in the U.S., where lobbyists pay billions and millions to people who write the so-called laws that allow those things to happen. So I'm going to read from this particular label of an oat product that you go into the grocery store and buy, and it's got whole grain rolled oats, sugar, freeze-dried raspberry pieces, freeze-dried strawberry pieces, and natural flavoring. So if you're in the UK, that's what you get. Now, if you think somebody doesn't know what they're doing, take a look at the list in the US. Here's what's in it. Whole grain rolled oats, sugar, creaming agent, maltodextrin, sunflower and or palm oil, whey, sodium caseinate. Flavored and colored fruit pieces, dehydrated apples treated with sodium sulfite, artificial strawberry flavor, citric acid, red dye number 40, salt, guar gum, artificial flavor, citric acid, niacinamide, vitamin A palmitate, reduced iron, pyroxene hydrochloride, riboflavin, thiamine, nitrate, and folic acid. So there's one country to another. If you think all of those things are what are going to build your vitality and you don't know any better and that's what you're eating, then don't be surprised if it doesn't take more than decades and decades and decades. Let's take one other example. This is a product that's sold in hundreds of thousands of restaurants. Takeout, fast food type restaurants in America by a particular name, which I'm not going to clown around and mention what the company is. But the ingredients are, these are their French fries, potatoes, vegetable oil, canola oil, soybean oil, hydrogenated soybean oil, natural beef flavor, wheat and milk derivatives, citric acids, dextrose, sodium acid, pyrophosphate, salt, prepared in vegetable oil, canola oil, corn oil, soybean oil, hydrogenated soybean oil with TBHQ, and citric acid added to preserve freshness, dimethylpolysiloxate added as an anti-foaming agent. Natural beef flavor contains hydrolyzed wheat and hydrolyzed milk as starting ingredients. Ta-da! Let's see how that does for your vitality. In the ancient teachings, when they said you had to be holy, my offering is that wasn't some sort of a religious idea that you got to get down on your knees and have your hands folded. It meant you have to understand on all levels everything that impacts your ability to function. And if you are really saying, I am committed, I want to clean up my multi-generational database, then you have to look at and you have to understand how each thing that you engage in, each energy that you take part in, how that impacts your vitality, your physiology, and your expression in the world. It's just part of how it works. And, if you're going to change one thing, if you look at it all and you say, I can't do all of that, so I'm just going to change one thing. Change your mind. If we go to the opening words in the book of John in Aramaic, it does not say in the beginning was the Word and the Word became flesh. What it says is in the beginning was the mind energy and the mind energy became flesh. When you think a thought, that thought turns into a molecule, a neuropeptide. That neuropeptide circulates around in your structure until it finds a cell with a receptor site that matches. It lands on the cell. If you were inside the cell watching that receptor site, let's say the cell is transparent, and you're watching that neuropeptide, that thought that is now a molecule, landing on the cell, what you would see coming into the cell, remember, you're on the inside of the cell watching, you'd see what we call chemistry. Mind energy becoming flesh. And if that mind energy does not reflect as a chemical that supports your cellular health, then you just engaged in a disease. Guess what the disease energies are? Any form of hostility or fear. They're the things that need to be forgiven. If your mind is informed from being, if Rakhma is open, then the mind of love, exactly, and again, this isn't religious, it's like where we live. Then the mind that Christ used, the mind of love, the same mind that's in you, that it's your birthright to use, becomes your source of being. it becomes what guides your perception, decisions, and behaviors. This is the most brilliant piece of neuropsychiatry that you'll find in the world, and it comes right straight out of the mouth of Yeshua 2,000 years ago. Find me the psychiatrist that understands that. Good luck. So the objective here is to have this state that's referred to as all-embracing love, that I maintain the presence of my human life, which is created love, whatever's happening in my world. And when I can't, instead of talking about that, which is going on in the world, I need to walk away from that situation talking about me and what's going on inside of me. And that means that we have to give up our membership card in the one world universal religion of blame. You got to stop the conversation about they made me feel, and you got to start to own. You got to stop fighting whatever comes in. Oh, I have an argument with anything. Oh, I have to correct them. I have to fix them. I have to straighten them out. Well, good luck. Guess what you're playing? You're playing a game out of the non-being mind, out of carbon-based memory. And there is no life in that because it's from the past. And there is no future in the past. Any form of hostility or fear that's aroused is either an opportunity to talk about somebody else and blame them or be frustrated at them or give them the breath or give them the look or withdraw from them, or it's the opportunity to take a breath and go, oh, what's moving in me that I have this form of hostility or fear? A powerful question that I found, and I repeat this often, is that I ask myself the question, or I inform myself if there's some form of hostility or fear going on in me and I want to blame somebody else for it. I inform myself, I speak of myself as having a mental illness. I talk to myself about my mental illness. Oh, my response was hostility. That's my mental illness, rather than look what they've done to me. Oh, here's this frustration that I want to point at them. Oh, my mental illness. I'm so angry with them. No, you're not. You've never been angry with anybody. But if you're angry, you're caught in your own mental illness. Anger is produces disintegrative chemistry in the cell. Hostility and fear are signals that your mind is using corrupt data. It's time to give it up, time to work through it. So that's what we're here to support. So that your perceptions are always formed and informed by and from the active presence of love. And when they're not, is when you go into action and you forgive. So this word Rihanna, the source of thoughts. And Matthew 22:37, 27, your thoughts. And this Ruka, spirit, energy, wind, electricity, this feminine elemental force in us that undoes the effects of our errors and teaches us the truth. So Ruka is variously, if we look beneath that, again, we're on the bottom page 91. Ruka is variously translated as the wind force, spirit. But in actuality, under it all, it is the breath. If we go to the creation story, it doesn't say the Creator sent out His spirit. It said the Creator sent out His breath. So the top of 92, Ruka is the feminine force for that which is divinely intended for man, the third unit of the Trinity. And we've already covered, we've gone through and read the essay on Ruka. And so if we go to page 93, and you notice at the bottom of that essay There is no word that clearly cues the thought or concept in our Western cultures. And that's as Ruka de Kucha, and that's why that was left in its original form. So Ruch, as in Matthew 5:3, is a phonetic variant of Ruka. Sabi, the wish, to intend, to desire, establish a goal, set an objective. So this becomes a core concept in the process of forgiveness, recognizing that perception. And, it took me 35 years of teaching first century Aramaic forgiveness to finally go, oh, that's why I would cancel a perfectly good goal. Gee, that person just puked on me and all I wanted was for them to care for me. Now, what's wrong with me wanting them to care for me? Why would I cancel the goal? I mean, Michael, that's just stupid. Why would I cancel the goal for them to care for me? Well, I agree with you. For them to care for you, perfectly good goal. That's a reasonable goal for everybody to have, for everybody they ever meet ever in their lifetimes. Perfectly good goal. I don't cancel the goal ever because there's something wrong with it. Some people who first tap into this first century Aramaic forgiveness work think, oh, I guess there's something wrong. I've had people say, oh, so I'm not supposed to have any goals. I never said that. Without goals, you'd be dead. They're an absolutely necessary part. In fact, we have a whole course on setting goals, framing, setting, canceling goals, exercising the spiritual faculty of will, which is the faculty of being that's designed to manage our human minds. And we have a worksheet, the mind goal management sheet. Why would I cancel a perfectly good goal? Because I realize that when I load it in my mind, it causes my mind to use corrupt data to build my brain's image of myself or someone else or something else. And when I realize that, I wake up and go, oh, I'm not going to cancel this goal because I don't want it, or if there's anything wrong with it. I'm going to cancel this goal because I take responsibility for the hostility or fear that setting that goal in my mind arouses in me, and I wish to be free of all corrupt data. Therefore, I'm going to forgive as to this hostility or fear. So the word sabi is repeated several times as desire, desires, their goal, the desire or the will. Satana, the Aramaic, absence of good, the resistor, one who misleads. Shalit, a noun, an act of ultimate executive authority. A dictator would be called a shultana. So in Matthew 7:29, one of ultimate authority. Shlama is to hear. Shapira, beautiful, becoming. And Shabuk, and here's Shabag, Shabuk, there are variations. Tishbakun, Nishbuk. So there are several variations. We're on page 94 toward the top. And this is the core word around the idea of forgiveness, this word Shabag or Shabak. So it has a variety of reflections throughout Matthew: leave, forgive, forgive, you forgive, forgave, does forgive, forgive in different tenses by adding suffixes and prefixes, which is what the Aramaic language does. And then the last three are around the idea of canceling. So when one recognizes that one's goal, again, sabi, we just covered from the bottom, page 93, if it's causing my mind to use hostility, or fear-based data to produce my reality, I need to shabag, cancel that goal. That is, get rid of that goal. Free myself from it. And so that's where we want to head with this level of understanding.
And you have a hand up.
Okay, let's go for it.
Let's see how this works. Okay, Celinda, I have your microphone on. Let's see if we can hear you.
Miss Celinda, you got a thought for us? Hello, Celinda. I don't know if there's a mute button on your end that you need to push. Doesn't look like it's going to work, Gene.
Okay, Celinda, push the button at the bottom of your phone again, and let's see if it will pop you up. And aloha, love, you had clicked, but then you disappeared. So click it again. All right, let's see. All right, that time it gave me something different.
We're learning. Be patient with us here, if you would.
Okay, I have got both Jamuna and Celinda both marked as speakers. Okay. Jamuna, you're on.
Hey there, young lady. Welcome.
Hi, aloha.
Hi, it works. Hey. You're a little quiet, but I can hear you, yes.
Okay, hold on. Let me get closer to...
I'm with you too. I'll wait.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we got you, Ghost. Go ahead, Jamuna.
Hi, I just want to say good morning. I called in and then I hung up because I was still trying to figure it out. But since I'm on the air, I just wanted to say aloha, everybody. One love. And yeah, and I really enjoy hearing your breath, Michael. I can hear you making that breath, so you're inspiring. That's all I have to
Jeannie
say.
calls it my Darth Vader breath.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, just beautiful. I guess, the only thing is like with this generational variance, like healing, I guess is the only way I'm going to say, the only way I
Right.
can think of it. Right. Um, it's it can actually feel very overwhelming. But
That's, I think, the symbol. Remember, in the scriptures, everything is metaphorical. Everything is an allegory. And when they talked about the flood, I think that's the allegory of the flood. Once you start opening the unconscious, I mean, literally, if you are the early adopter in your family system, the scriptures specifically talk about 3 to 4 generations. If you go back 4 generations and you include yourself, that's 31 lives. Like, who told us that we had every memory, every thought, every feeling, every reality formulated by the 30 people who went before us in our generations? Like, did anybody ever tell us that? And that was the foundation for how carbon-based memory formulated the realities our minds present. And then, if you just go back, sit down and do the math, you go back 30 generations, there are over 1.6 billion lives in you. Now, when I look at, and this is true of, I've never had anybody who stepped up and said it any differently, but if I look at everybody that I know of in my bloodline, the people who were deceased that I, heard about, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, I can't think of one person in my family system that could have had this conversation or ever conceived of such a conversation. So I became the early adopter. What does that mean? That means I'm taking it on for the whole system. If you're the early adopter, if your parents were involved in doing their work and cleaning up their genes and such, you've got a whole lot easier time of it than most people do. But I haven't run into too many people. I do think about one person. This fellow was a Unity minister, and both of his parents were ministers. I'm not sure what church they were in. And this guy was an alcoholic that lived most of his life in trauma, even though his parents were both supposedly were ministers. So, if you're the early adopter, yeah, the flood's going to be huge. And if you stay with it, if you sustain your effort, you will change that whole dynamic. And it is amazing, if you really dig in and do your work, how quickly it can happen.
yeah, Jai, I love it. Yes. Yeah, Yeah, you know
Aloha.
what? If Jesus did it, we can all do it.
That's what it speaks of him being, the first of brothers, sisters. It was he was like the way shower. Here it is. Here's how it's done. And he said, the things I do, you can do. It wasn't about watching what he did. It was about actually jumping in and doing your work. And there's one particular passage I'd like to look at, and it's a case where a number of disciples come together with Yeshua, and they ask him, well, what do we need to do to kind of like to keep the Creator happy? And so he tells them, basically, you have to do your work. And literally half of his audience. The energy was so disturbed, half of his audience, when he told them what they had to do, left and never came back. And he even turned to Peter in that particular case. And, obviously there had to be quite a bit of disturbance going on in the field when he really told them what they were going to have to do. And he says to Peter, are you going to leave too? That's how disturbed the field was. So, yeah, it's to be the early adopter, it's quite a challenge. And for me personally, I am in such deep gratitude, and it's a whole different thing than the religion idea of thank you, Jesus, but that he came forward with this level of understanding and handed it to humanity, to me, is just monumental and sure leaves me in deep appreciation.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Honored, delighted.
All right.
Aloha. All right, take care. Blessings. Aloha. Miss Celinda,
Sir.
You have a question for us, young lady?
Oh, I'm certainly glad I figured out this technology. I feel like I'm doing hurdles.
You're loud and clear. We can hear you. Hooray.
Whoa.
I'm certainly glad that Jeannie's figured out this technology too, because if it were up to me, we would not be doing this show.
Exactly.
So thank you, Jeannie.
Yeah, a couple of things. A few days ago, someone was talking to you about the political situation, and you said, "Oh, I'm absolutely disgusted about that." And she asked you if it was. I mean, can you be disgusted?
I don't think I said. I don't think you'll find anywhere that I said those words.
Let me finish. That's what I heard. Sorry.
Okay. Then what I'm going to ask you to do, Celinda, so we stay on track, because remember yesterday when we talked and you wouldn't let me give you the feedback I wanted to give you. Later, it was gone. So I just want to stay on track with it, and I'm happy for you to give me feedback as we go. But I think if you check the archives, I may have said that the situation is disgusting, but I didn't make a reference to disgust inside of me. I think many things going on in our culture are situations that would accurately be described as disgusting.
Thank you, because that's the conclusion I came to, and I was going to share that with you. I realized that we can have disgust, but is it attached to a negative feeling? Is that what I hear you saying?
Well, I think that more that we have a language, and we have words for that at least are symbols of certain experiences in the language. So to me, the word disgust is something that as humans, we've determined that certain things deserve this title, as opposed to it being a verb about something moving in me. I am disgusted. If something of disgust, to me, that would be something based in probably either fear or hostility, or maybe a little of both, and would be a fit subject for forgiveness. But if there's something that basically our culture has agreed, this word represents this particular circumstance or situation, it's appropriate to use that word to describe that circumstance or situation. And if I have some form of negative attachment, then it's my work.
So it's kind of like Dr. Tim saying throwing garbage on the buffet table. That would be a disgusting event. That would be
accurately described in the culture as disgusting. Yes, that would be my take.
Okay, that really helps. And I thought you were talking about shlema, to cancel. And then you mentioned
Shabak. is
Shabbat.
the cancel. Yeah.
What's the one for sultan? For
Sultana,
the ultimate authority, because you
authority.
mentioned some.
That's Shalit, Shalit,
Okay.
act of
Yeah.
ultimate executive authority. And
Yes.
then it expresses that a dictator would be called Sultana.
And what was the base word for that you were talking about at the
Satana,
same time?
Satana,
Okay.
which is
Good.
the absence of good, the resistor, one who misleads. What the
Well,
culture would call Satan.
Well, this is the thought I had, that the newborn being love incarnate,
Right?
informed. I realize what I'm beginning to realize, and I pass it by for your observation, is that I was given that gift of free will when, in the original creation of the human being at the very beginning, whatever that mystery is, I have no idea. I mean, we can go back to the child's story of the Garden of Eden, but whenever the breath of eternal life was breathed into our Adamus form, to me, I was given that gift then. It's not that I'm going to get it now today. It's a matter of me waking up to the fact that
Right.
that is what I am. That is whom I am.
Yeah. And the culture offers that as being born again as well.
Right. But, and because we live in this is really complicated to put into words for me, but I'm beginning to grasp it. Since we live in the reality of the eternal now, in which, or we have the opportunity to live in the actuality of the eternal now, if we step into that with awareness, every moment that we manage to step into that with awareness, we have that original blessing operating in our life. And since we were given free will as part of the mind of the Christos mind, what that means to the divine mind, what that means to me is at that moment I was given free will, I was also given autonomy over my own personal life. Does that make sense?
Choice.
Yeah.
And the non-being self is operated by decisions. The mind of man is a decision-making device. If I say don't think about the color of your car, you don't choose blue. If what's in brain cells is blue, that's what fires. It isn't a choice, it's a decision. So the firing of brain cells presents decisions, and the mind of man, Adamos, carbon-based memory, is just a decision-making machine, and it will run a person's whole life without the person ever waking up to making an actual choice, which to me would mean that they originate something new and put it into carbon-based memory to be expressed in the world.
Right. And if I'm not walking in the Rakhma way, then I'm actually making decisions every time I bring an interpretation into my meaning for what my individual, personal, experiential meaning for what a word becomes for me, because that word is only a symbol, right?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Well, and actually, it's a symbol of a symbol.
Right.
We have an event, let's say the moon. So the moon is there, and my brain, out of the brain cells I have, maybe it involves werewolves, and maybe it involves scary stories and what have you. That presentation of the moon resonates decision in my mind, and my mind presents whatever its end construct is about the moon. So we have the actual moon. Then we have a construct in our mind that we call the moon. That's one generation removed. So the reality in the mind is a symbol of the moon. And then we put a word moon to it. So now we've got a symbol of a symbol, twice removed from the actuality of the thing. The objective of this work is to come to the point where we experience the actuality of a thing and the actuality of who we are, rather than being run by symbols and symbols of symbols.
Right, and here's another little overlay that I'd like to share with you. That I think I'd like your observation on, because maybe I'm right on the bullseye. When there's a construct dog that our culture gives to us, right? But until I have an actual experience of dog at some point in myself, I really don't have I don't have an understanding of dog. As soon as I have an experience, my first experience of a dog, say a dog came up and bit me on the cheek, or a dog came up and licked me on
Cancel
the
that.
cheek. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, cancel that. That I was thinking of a small child, right, who would reach out for a dog that's not particularly friendly. And so what I would form my interpretation of what a dog was, a scary thing, a sweet, fun thing, in that
Right.
moment. Is that not possible?
That's the whole game, is that carbon-based memory has a reality for everything.
Right.
And the reality is that carbon-based memory, through decisions, fire and present to us, are simply reflections of what's held in carbon-based memory. And what most people do is they live in those reflections and never go to the actual experience of what it is that's happening in the world.
Which is
And the
energy.
person who does that would be described as spiritually dead. You know, there's the spot where Yeshua is interacting with a man who gets all excited about it. He says, boy, I'm going to come do this. I'm going to do this work. And but first I have to go bury my mother and my father, which meant take care of them until they died and buried them. And Yeshua said, let the dead bury the dead. If you're going to actually do this, now that you've made the choice to do it, is the time to do it, because carbon-based memory will suck you back in again, and you probably will never do it if you don't do it now. And so to wake up and function out of being is to be alive. Otherwise, it's just, you've heard me say before, one of my early teachers used to say 100 million people live and die every century and never even know they'd lived. Because carbon-based memory is just running the whole show. There's never been an awakening of the being independent of what's going on in the mind.
Right. And there's one other thought I had that kind of connects with all of this. When I was in the traditional Christian understanding, I was doing a lot of studying, and I came across a passage in one of my studies that for the Hebrew mind, which I'm assuming is the same for the Aramaic because they were all Aramaic, or similar because they're all Aramaic based, to know meant to physically experience. You didn't know. So for me, knowing is a body thing. My personal experience knows, and because I know, I'm going to act accordingly to whatever I decide I know. And so for me, that construct, the mental construct in Rakhma would be knowing, would be being informed in Rakhma, and that would be the top. I don't like top because it's hierarchical, but the heart energy would be me being informed by Ruha. And for me to be informed, to know, is I'm going to be walking the way Rahma would have me walk the way. Is that making any sense, or can you elaborate on that or expand or adjust?
Not sure. It got a little long, but my take would be that